Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a very exciting show for you today. Brianna, what's up?
Well, first, we've got some breaking news this morning. Liz Truss resigned as Prime Minister of the UK just moments ago, bringing an end to an embattled 6-week tenure that saw Truss's approval rating plummet and her own party turn on her over a dramatic economic downturn. Her 44-day term is the shortest in UK Prime Minister history.
I came into office at a time of great economic and international instability. Families and businesses were worried about how to pay their bills. Putin's illegal war in Ukraine threatens the security of our whole continent, and our country has been held back for too long by low economic growth. I was elected by the Conservative Party with a mandate to change this. We delivered on energy bills and on cutting national insurance. And we set out a vision for a low-tax, high-growth economy that would take advantage of the freedoms of Brexit. I recognise, though, given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
And we're so lucky to have Julia Manchester, our colleague at The Hill, joining us in studio to help break this all down. Julia, how do we get here? What is going on?
Yeah, I know. Just to quote the TikTok meme, it's what on earth is going on in the House of Commons. Look, I think this was always going to be a tumultuous tenure for Liz Truss, no matter how long she served. She came in at a time when there was so much backlash against Boris Johnson, now the former prime minister. Now, of course, he resigned for different reasons. He was very much facing a slew of scandals about COVID and so on and so forth. So with Liz Truss, though, this is all economics, and she was trying to implement what has been called Trussonomics, if you will, slashing tax cuts at, historic rates in the United Kingdom. The issue with that, there didn't appear to be a plan as to how to pay for those tax cuts, especially at a time seeing record inflation, not just in the UK, but really around the world. So there was an issue. And then, of course, there was internal turmoil within the Conservative Party. We saw that her minister resigned just days ago, only to be replaced by Jeremy Hunt, who, if you remember, in 2019, ran against Boris Johnson for Conservative Party leadership. So there was quite a bit of internal party turmoil here. I don't think it's necessarily surprising that she resigned. However, I think the length of her tenure is certainly short. She is the serving prime minister in British history. I think the last one was George Canning in 1827 for 5 months, and he died. Liz Truss is resigning after 44 days. So certainly a surprising start to our Tuesday and I guess midday in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, Rob counting her tenure in Scaramucci's earlier before we came on.
I don't know what the metric conversion is for Scaramucci.
Right. But look, the contrast that you Boris Johnson is an interesting one, because that is someone who has been under scrutiny and criticism for a longer period of time. And it is interesting to note that Liz Truss would have not lasted. Paul Krugman wrote an article, an opinion piece yesterday in the Times, arguing that Liz Truss's fundamental is that she charted out a place in the kind of gestalt of opinions that is occupied by very few people, this kind of libertarian zone, fiscally conservative and socially liberal. And that perhaps
it's just me and her in this empty quadrant.
I mean, is it the case that there's just not the same kind of brilliance in the political sphere if you are advancing tax cuts for the rich, as she was doing, without also having that social grist to keep working class people with you, and kind of being anti-immigration and having some of these anti-politics touch points in your discourse as well?
Yeah, it seems like that was really the case, during her tenure. But I think, at least from an American perspective, and the coverage that we'll to see, we saw that so much of her tenure was really overshadowed by economics and the state of the economy. And I think part of the reason for that is that, over the past years, since Britain formally voted to leave the European Union, we've seen a lot of turmoil when it comes to their politics. I mean, David Cameron left, then you had Theresa, you had Boris Johnson, now Liz Truss, and whoever comes after her. And it leads to very much a place of concern among a lot of people. They don't know what's next.
And all of those people you mentioned, those are all the previous leaders, those are all, it's remarkable to me that the UK has been governed Conservative Party since Gordon Brown left in 2010. It's a 12-year war with much turnover in terms of leadership, all these embarrassing fights, and yet the Conservative coalition remains in power. So I guess, is this one thing too many? Will Labour make a comeback? The approval number,
Right.
like the people's, who would you prefer to be in charge, is very much Labour right now. Labour has been in the wilderness for what would be in the U.S. context, a just totally unprecedented amount of time.
Right. I'm wondering, it probably has to do with the factor, I would guess, it has to that conservatives maybe politically may just be more savvy in the United Kingdom, be able to capitalize on that more than Labour has been able to. But, in the era that Britain finds itself in, outside of the European Union, as Russ said that in her statement, as Russia's war in Ukraine threatens the stability of Europe, much of the Western and, world in general, I'm wondering if there will be a shift among British people, to say, we've had it with this type of party.
Well, Liz Truss
switch to
was
the other.
incredibly pro, as was Boris Johnson, defending Ukraine, etc.
Right.
I don't know to how well that fits. Out here, that a lot of actual conservative voters are not as for an unlimited commitment to Ukraine's defense as their own players, and certainly not as much as the sort of Biden administration here. I wonder if there's a dynamic in the UK.
Yeah, and I think that
I have no idea.
I don't know exactly. I will certainly find out soon, but I think a lot of it has to do with the state of the economy. I mean, here in the States, there is economic hurt with inflation and these, gas prices and such. We seem to see that happening in the United Kingdom. I would imagine that there is that question as well.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us to talk about that. I'm sure we'll continue to follow this story in the case. And coming up next, I'll tell you what's on my radar.